Cam Edge is a legit option to be Maryland's quarterback.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, video content creator for 247 Sports and InsideMarylandSports.com, and host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with the boost or bonus bets daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Cameron Edge is a legitimate option to be Maryland's starting quarterback. In my opinion, I know a lot of people think it's a two-man race, and I talked about it the other day. I said the Maryland quarterback battle is a lot closer than people think. But I think that Cameron Edge is a legitimate option to be our quarterback next year. These quarterback battles work funny. You never know exactly what can happen. You never know what trajectory they can take. You never know who ends up actually being the quarterback at the end of the day. And I really believe since high school, I have believed that Cameron Edge has really high upside, has really a lot of tools in terms of passing. I think there's some limitations in his games in terms of his running. He's not a star athlete by any means. And that's something where you can look at Cameron Edge and say that will hurt him if he was our starter, because he's not an amazing athlete. He's not going to outrun guys. He's not going to create a lot in the quarterback run game. He can move a little bit, but he's more of a pocket type of guy. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing for Maryland football. I think that Cam Edge is the most natural thrower of the football out of all three guys. Between Edwards, Morris, and Edge, I think Cameron Edge is the most natural thrower of the football. And what I mean by that is that he's got the most God-given talent as purely a thrower of the football. And so for me, yeah, it seems like Billy Edwards and MJ Morris are the two that are the favorite right now for the quarterback battle. And Coach Loxley would probably tell you that everybody in that room has a shot still, and it's still an open competition. But it does seem like MJ Morris and Billy Edwards are the favorites. But I really do believe that Cameron Edge has that natural ability, that God-given talent, purely throwing the football, to stay a legit option for Maryland football. I really think he has the talent. I really think that he's an upside with throwing the football. And I think he can do a lot of similar stuff that Talia did. Like when I'm watching Cameron Edge play, and I know there was some question marks about his accuracy a little bit in the spring football, and maybe he didn't have his best spring ever, and some different things like that. But as a thrower of the football, I still do believe that out of these three guys, he's the best guy, which allows him to play probably the closest brand of football of what we played last year. Talia, yes, he can move a little bit. Talia could get out the pocket a little bit. Yeah, for sure. Talia could do some of that stuff, but he wasn't by no means elite at that. And I would say that Cameron Edge is similar to what Talia can do as a player. I think that Cameron Edge probably has a little bit of a bigger arm, but Talia has played way more, was way more consistent at that point. Talia was the better player, and I think that was pretty obvious. I mean, even though we didn't get to see Cameron Edge play, there was a reason Talia is the all-time Big Ten passing leader and all those different things. But the reason I think Cameron Edge is a legitimate option is that we can run similar stuff than what we ran with Talia. With Talia, we threw the ball a ton. There were games where I was like, oh my goodness, how many times are we going to throw the ball? Like, are we going to run the ball at all? And I was pushing. I was like, we need to run the ball some more. And I look at Cameron Edge and I say, we could play a similar brand of football. Now, it still is going to be different. We're definitely still going to want to run the ball more. But I do think that we can play a similar brand in terms of the same types of passing concepts. We won't have to change our offense very much, and I can still see him being very successful as a guy that if we need him to throw the ball 35 times a game, I think that I have the confidence in Cameron Edge's arm and his talent as a thrower of the football. I have confidence in him that he'll be able to get that done, and he'll be able to do that at a pretty high level. Like last year, there was games where Talia had to throw the ball a ton. He had to throw the ball 47 times against Northwestern, 40 times against Nebraska, 41 times against Ohio State. And I like Edge in this quarterback battle, and I think he's a legit option because I think that Edge is a guy that if he has to throw the ball 40 times, I'm okay with it. I don't think that we're going to lose the game like that. I don't think that it's over because Cameron Edge threw the ball 40 times. And if we get to that number, that means we had no shot at winning the game and all those different things. If Cameron Edge ends up throwing the ball 30 times a game, I wouldn't be mad. Would I say, yeah, we should probably get more of a run game going because he doesn't have much experience and he hasn't done a lot as a Maryland quarterback? I would say, yeah, definitely. But I would say in a perfect world where he's throwing the ball 30, 40 times, I think we'd be better off with Cameron Edge in the game throwing the ball 30, 40 times a game than if Billy Edwards tried to play the brand of football that we have played. And with Billy Edwards, I think that if he can't play that type of football, we're not going to throw the ball 40 times a game with Billy Edwards. We're just not going to do it. I know you guys saw the Music City Bowl game where Billy Edwards wins the MVP and it looks like, oh, Billy Edwards is really going to be the next Maryland quarterback. And if you just looked at it and saw, oh, he won the MVP of the Music City Bowl game, he must have done some really good things. But when you really look at the stats, they weren't that good. Billy Edwards ended up throwing the ball 20 times and was 6 of 20. He was 30% completion percentage. That doesn't get it done. So imagine Billy Edwards trying to throw the ball 30 times a game. He's not going to be a 30% completion percentage guy, but I don't think he's going to be exactly a completion percentage guy that Cameron Edge can be as a player. So I look at it and I say, yeah, Billy Edwards has the upper hand over Cameron Edge. He can do way more in the quarterback run game. But if Maryland wants to play the same style that they want to play next year and they don't have to do all these different things with Billy Edwards, and I know I'm not talking about MJ Morris yet. I'll get into MJ Morris in a second. Then I think that you would have to put Cameron Edge in that conversation to be the actual starter. And I believe he is a real option to be the Maryland football starter. Now, is he a real option in Coach Loxley's eyes? I think so, honestly. I do think so. And I can see a world where some things go wrong this year and Cameron Edge gets a shot at some point, and maybe MJ Morris starts the year and he doesn't look great, and then we go to Billy, and then Billy doesn't look great, and then Cameron Edge gets a shot, or early on, maybe all three guys get a shot. I can see a world where that can happen, but I believe as a pure thrower of the football, Cameron Edge is just better than Billy Edwards, and that's enough for me to say he's in the conversation and he's a legitimate option in this quarterback battle. Now, compared to MJ Morris, it's a little bit different because I believe that MJ Morris is more complete and is the most complete player in that room in terms of he can run, he can throw, he can do different things. But I believe that Cameron Edge, or I know that it's a fact, Cameron Edge has way more time in the Maryland system than MJ Morris. Cameron Edge has had just more time. That's just what it is. He's gotten a lot more time in the Maryland system. So I look at it and I say, okay, MJ Morris, maybe he's more talented. Maybe he can do a little bit more. But Cameron Edge knows that offense. And I know Cameron Edge has worked really hard to understand that offense, to know exactly where to go with the ball in that offense. And I look at him and I say, okay, so this is interesting. Yeah, MJ Morris comes in, really good player, highly sought after transfer, had an offer from LSU and some different things. And he was definitely a guy that multiple people wanted. But then I look at Cameron Edge and say, he's been in the Maryland system for a while now. He knows it. And Cameron Edge was a 4-star on some website when he committed to Maryland. Like, he's a talented thrower of the football. So maybe Coach Loxley wants somebody that can just be more a machine as throwing the football. And yeah, he's not going to create a bunch of cool plays in the run game and those different things, but he's going to be able to throw the ball down the field. He's a strong arm. We saw it in the Music City Bowl game where he just unleashed one of the better throws I've seen out of anyone out of the Maryland quarterback room last year. Maybe the best ball I saw him throw to Caden Prather last year. And maybe Coach Loxley looks at it and says, I think it's definitely a possibility where he's like, we have our strength as our wide receivers, Caden Prather and Ty Fellon outside, and I want to get those guys the ball, and Cameron Edge is the best option to just consistently deliver those guys the ball. I think that's not a crazy thing to say. I think that's a realistic thing. He could end up saying, and maybe it's not right away, but maybe Billy Edwards starts and it's just not going right, or MJ Moore starts and it's not going right, and Cameron Edge takes it over, or maybe Cameron Edge has a really good summer football camp and he gets into the conversation right before the season. I know we're coming down to it, and where I hope there's more stuff to come out about this quarterback battle, but I do think that Cameron Edge offers some of that upside as a thrower and just consistently getting the ball in the right spots to say that he is a legit option in the Maryland quarterback battle. And we can't say that he doesn't have a chance at winning it, because I think he has a little bit of a chance. I'm not saying it's a lot, but I do think that he's a legitimate option. And more so, I think during the season, if we see people struggle, if we see us taking a couple losses, if things aren't going right in that quarterback room, Cameron Edge could get an opportunity. So overall, I have to say that Cameron Edge is a legit option for the Maryland quarterback one spot. I do think he's a legitimate option, whether it's midseason, later on in the season, right at the first game of the season, whatever it is. I think that he's a legit option to be Maryland's quarterback room. Maryland has the most upside in the tight end room out of anybody. I will talk about that after this ad from FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sounds going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most fun out of your summer. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. There's so many things to bet on FanDuel, guys. So make sure you guys go over there, whether you want to pick who wins the World Series or if you want to choose who wins the first games back on the All-Star break from the MLB. There's so many different things you guys can do. So make sure you guys go check out FanDuel. FanDuel, the official partner of the MLB. Maryland's tight end room might have the most upside out of anybody in the country. I'm kind of bruised still from these EA Sports ratings, and I'm not going to talk about them a ton, but the way they rated Maryland's tight end room, specifically Dylan Wade, was definitely disrespectful. And I want to say this. That was completely wrong in that this Maryland tight end room might have the most upside. I'm not saying they're the best, but they might have the most upside out of anyone in the Big Ten and really in the country. Maryland's tight ends are coming. And we got two guys in Preston Howard and Dylan Wade that are two of the most talented tight ends in the Big Ten. And not everyone knows them yet. Not everybody knows them. But Preston Howard and Dylan Wade have a chance to take their game to a level that we haven't quite seen them hit yet, but they have a chance to take their game to the next level. And I know Dylan Wade's coming off a freshman year where he might have got overshadowed by Rico Walker, and Rico Walker being a 4-star and all those different things, and Rico Walker transferring to Auburn and all those stuff about Rico Walker coming in and him being in front of Dylan Wade. But now it's Dylan Wade's show. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, Dylan Wade, what I've seen with my eyes in spring ball and what I've heard about him throughout the throughout the spring, Dylan Wade is going to be a dude. And the thing is, not everyone's going to know, and a lot of it's projection, a lot of it's upside. A lot of it's not what we've actually seen. It's like one of those things where it's like, there's going to be every year they're going to talk about what guys have the chance to really kind of blow up and enter a different atmosphere in college football that we haven't really seen, and who has a chance to really jump up boards or whatever it is. If they talk about the NFL draft, or when they talk about the NFL, they usually are talking about like what second-year quarterback has a chance to make a huge jump. It's a similar type of thing here when I talk about Dillon Wade and Preston Howard in a way. Even though Preston Howard was tight end 2 last year, got a ton of time. But when I talk about both of those guys, I'm saying they both have a real shot to make those types of jumps where we're looking at them and saying, wow, going into next year, are those two guys the top 2 tight ends? And is that the best tight end duo in the Big Ten? Like, we could say that. And I think Preston Howard, it starts with his frame, what he can do at 6'6", the way he can run, the way he catches the ball, and that size and what he brings with that size. You don't normally get a guy that can move like that at 6'6", that can also catch the ball. We've seen him make amazing catches. And then you just don't usually get that type of specimen as a guy at the tight end spot that you look at and you're saying, okay, like he's been a tight end 2. He's been backing up a really good tight end in Corey Dyches, who's been one of the better tight ends in college, or in the Big Ten, I'll say. Maybe not quite in college football, but in the Big Ten. He was an all Big Ten selection and all those different things. But you don't usually get a guy as a backup that's 6'6", can run like a deer, can catch the ball, and has made some real amazing catches. Like Preston Howard, when you build a tight end in a lab, it's going to look similar to what he is. 6'6", big, can run, can catch the ball too. And we've seen it with Preston Howard. We've seen it in flashes. In the Rutgers game, 2 receptions for 49 yards. Penn State had a couple receptions. Nebraska had a couple of receptions. And we've seen it in glimpses with him. And that's the thing when you look at these guys to make big jumps like this, when I'm talking about these two, I'm not talking about guys that are established. I'm talking about guys with upside where we've seen the glimpses of Preston Howard make one of the best catches I've seen in the spring game, make some huge types of plays in our season. It was in spots. It's not like, oh, it's all over the film. It's in spots, but that's what you like to see. You like to see glimpses when they're the backup and that talented, where I'm looking at Preston Howard and saying he has a chance if the quarterback, whoever the quarterback is, gets him the ball, and if he gets better as a blocker, where we're looking at him and saying, this cat is different going into next year. We could look at him in the middle of the season and be saying he's having an all Big Ten type of year. And a similar thing can happen with Dillon Wade. Dillon Wade didn't show quite as many flashes last year just because he didn't play as much as Preston, with Preston being on the field a lot, being the tight end 2, but not having like a complete season of being like a starter or anything like that until we got to the bowl game. But with Dillon Wade, we didn't see a ton. Like I said, Rico Walker was in front of him, and then of course Corey Dyches and Preston Howard. It was like he was kind of buried a little bit in the depth chart. But then what we saw in the Music City Bowl game from Dillon Wade, where he gets a touchdown pass, and there have been some rumblings about him being pretty good. And when we see that live, and then we also see that in the spring game, him making a really big catch, and then when we hear about him being potentially the best player all spring on the Maryland football team, and Coach Loxley saying that he's excited about Dillon Wade's future, that's a guy where it's like, okay, we've heard about the glimpses he's showing. We've seen a couple of flashes, and I'm saying Maryland's tight end room might have the most upside out of anybody in Big Ten, because those are two guys that have the chance, where we've heard different things about their talent. I've seen it, so I know it's real. Sometimes you hear it, but you don't see it, and it doesn't quite go together, and it doesn't quite make sense. But with this, it makes sense. You got a guy that's a 6'6" with Preston Howard that can move, and you got a guy with Dillon Wade who's not as tall, but he moves a little bit different for a tight end. He's faster. He can run routes. He can separate, and you're looking at it and you say, Maryland's tight end room has a ton of upside with those two, and don't be surprised if those two guys get a lot of notice by the end of next year. Don't be surprised at all if we're looking at next year. I can see it already, where we're saying, okay, Caden Prather, Ty Felner gone. Who steps up in the receiver rooms? Definitely a huge question mark, but our tight ends might be our number one wide receivers going into next year. I can totally see it, and I really do believe that Preston Howard and Dylan Wade have some of the highest upside in a tight end room. They're not the most ready yet, and they're not the most experienced, but they have the highest upside maybe out of anybody in the Big Ten in a tight end room. Should Roman Hemby get a running back one type of load? I will talk about that right now. So let's talk about Roman Hemby. I don't think that he should get when I say a running back one load, I think of a type of team that is going to give their running back like basically all the carries, and the backup might get 2, 3, 4 carries between 5, 6, maybe between the backups. When I talk about a running back one a load, that's what I mean. And I think that he shouldn't get all the carries. He shouldn't get the load of the carries. I love Roman Hemby, but I think this year we are better off being a little bit more diverse as a running back game. And that's what we've been over the last couple of years. But I think it hurt last year because Antoine Littleton honestly just wasn't that good for most of the year. He just wasn't. I don't know exactly why, because he was pretty good his freshman year, but he took a huge step back in his redshirt sophomore year. It just didn't look great. But Roman Hemby has looked really good at times, and has looked pretty good at times. He's definitely been up and down a little bit, but Roman Hemby's a really good player in the Big Ten. But I'm looking at Maryland's other running backs, and I'm saying we don't need to tire Roman Hemby out because I love the other guys in that room. I love Nolan Ray and I love Colby McDonald. First of all, Colby McDonald statistically was one of our best players last year. Like if you just went off of yards per carry and the amount of touches he was getting and the amount of yards he was putting up, Colby McDonald might have been our best statistical player. And he runs so hard, and he's not going to complain if things aren't going exactly the way he wants it to or whatever. If he's not getting 100 carries per game, he's a guy that we can give the ball 5, 6, 7 times a game, and he's going to turn it into a really productive type of day for Colby McDonald. And then when I look at Nolan Ray, he's coming. I watched him in the spring game, and I'm like, wow, okay, this guy has a different gear. Like, this guy's a little bit different. Like, this guy can move a little bit different. This guy has an explosive type of beat that we're not used to, and he's just a little bit different in terms of the way he can move. I don't think people realize how good of an athlete, how explosive he looked. I was watching the spring game and I was like, is anybody else watching this? And other people have heard rumblings about him pushing Roman Hemby for running back one type of carries. And after watching the spring game, I can understand why people say that. And so I'm looking at those two guys and I'm saying, you have someone really explosive in Nolan Ray, someone consistent in Colby McDonald, and then you have Roman Hemby, who's been the star of that room for a couple of years now. And I'm saying there's no reason why we got to just give the ball off a bunch of times per game to Roman Hemby. We can split up the carries. Yeah, Roman Hemby should get the bulk, but I don't mind at all Colby McDonald getting some. I don't mind at all Nolan Ray getting some. I think it'll benefit us a lot. I think it'll help a lot in that running back room because later on the season, in the beginning of the season, it's nowhere near as bad. But later on in the season, it gets a lot harder. Like in the beginning of the season, it's like, okay, we play some good teams, don't get me wrong, but we play UConn, we play Virginia, Michigan State, Villanova, Indiana, nowhere near the back end of the schedule where last game of the season we play Penn State, we play Oregon, we play USC at home. Like at the back end, the back half of the season, a lot harder, and you don't want guys that are hurt. You don't want guys that are bruised up. So looking at the Maryland schedule, it will be really beneficial, even if Roman Hemby's running really well. As long as we're winning games, as long as we're in the right spots, I think giving the ball off multiple times to different guys, I think is the way to go in that room because I believe that's going to benefit us the most. And I think that'll help us the most overall when it comes to the running back room if we give the ball off to different guys at different times. And I really do. I would really like our options in that room, and I think they all can be good. I think Nolan Ray has a ton of potential. I think Roman Hemby is proven that he can be a good back, and Chloe McDonald. And they're all similar too in ways, but they're also different in ways as well. And I think they can all be on the field on third down. I think they can. I don't know about pass blocking. I haven't seen enough Chloe McDonald and Nolan Ray to be like they're good pass blockers. But if they are, then that's even better on third and longs. But I think that our running back room, we should give different guys carries. I really do think it'll help. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked On Terps.